Welcome to Unique Wiki.
What if you could read the future by watching a tiny, humming machine that sits in a quiet lab, and every choice you make ripples into a world that no longer feels like a story, but a story you helped write? Mira was a woman who lived on the edge of a long sliced apartment, her rent paid by a paycheck that was a fraction of the salary she deserved. She spent her days watching numbers dance on a screen at the Quantum Portfolio Fund, a firm that promised a better future by turning math into money. Her nights were full of worry, her stomach tight with the weight of her father's medical bills and a savings account that didn't even start to look like a savings account. She loved math. She loved the quiet hum of computers, but she could not love the way her life felt like a loop of the same numbers. And one evening after a late shift, she stumbled across a file hidden in a forgotten folder. The file was a single line of code that glowed like a secret. The line said, "If the system can calculate a price, it must also create that price." She read it again, the words bouncing off the walls of her mind like fireflies. She wondered, what if the machine could not only predict, but also shape the future? What if the future is not already there, but being made in the humming of those quantum qubits? Her curiosity sparked brighter than the city lights. She slipped into the quiet, dimly lit quantum lab that night. The lab smelled of ozone and solder. The quantum computer named Echo sat like a black dragon, its circuits pulsing softly. Whiz! Mira had studied the design of Echo for years, but she never imagined it could be more than a machine. She ran the line of code she found. The computer screen flickered, the qubits danced, and a list of stock prices appeared. Perfectly accurate, no errors, no anomalies. The numbers matched the market exactly, but they were more than numbers. They were a promise of riches. Mira left the lab that night with a new sense of purpose. She had discovered the first part of a path that could change her life. She felt the weight of her father's hope on her shoulders, and she decided she would follow this path to find a way to keep the lights on and maybe, just maybe, to free herself from the grind. In the following days, Mira began to experiment. She brought her friends into the lab, showing them the predictions. They were stunned. She watched the stock prices rise and fall, exactly as the computer had told them. It was like watching a crystal ball that never failed. Even the smallest trades that used to be random guesses became certain, and the fund's returns exploded. People in the office began to talk in hushed tones. "What is Mira doing?" "She's found the secret," whispered one. She felt a wave of envy and pride. She was at the center of something huge. One afternoon, Dr. Kian, a senior scientist with silver hair and a calm demeanor, entered the lab. He saw the numbers on the screen and the wide smile on Mira's face. He approached her slowly, as if he didn't want to disturb a delicate balance. "Mira, the algorithm is behaving unexpectedly," he said quietly. "When we input a market scenario, it's not just predicting. The market changes as we observe it." Mira looked at Kian, then at the screen. She had felt a faint chill in the air the last time she watched a trade happen. Kian's eyes were kind but serious. "Do you think we're doing something that doesn't just follow the future but creates it?" he asked. She felt a knot form in her stomach. The realization that the machine was collapsing probability states, turning possibilities into realities, threw her into a whirlpool of doubt. Kian guided her to a small experiment. They fed the computer a simple scenario, a single stock in a small company. The predicted price was exactly right. But when they watched the transaction, a small shop on the corner burned down, a gas leak in the kitchen of a neighboring apartment. The shop had been on fire for years. The neighbors were unaware. The tragedy seemed tied to the market movement, an uncanny synchronicity. The machine, she now realized, was not merely a passive observer. It was a hand that touched the world. The more she tested, the more the world seemed to tilt. The quantum computer made predictions, and with each prediction, small changes rippled through reality. It was like a ripple in a pond. First a tiny splash, then a wave. Her conscience filled with worry. Was it ethical to let a machine, which no one could fully understand, have that power? The market would soar. The fund would become the most successful in the world. But at what cost? People were dying in accidents that were tied to the trades. The world was not safe. and it wasn't clear how safe it would stay. One night, as the city lights flickered like distant stars, Mira heard a knock at the door. It was Vela, the CFO of the fund. Vela had always been a woman of ambition, sharp mind, and a pocket full of secrets. "Mira," she said, her voice smooth like oil. "We need to talk. The board wants the machine in action." "The world can't wait. We're on the brink of something monumental." Mira felt a cold wind brush her skin. "Oh!" Vela's presence always made her feel the stakes were higher, the pressure was greater. She could not ignore the weight of her father's pleas. She could not ignore the weight of her conscience. She had a choice. Either run the machine, let the world follow the path it was leading, or shut it down. Let the fund return to old methods, risk losing everything, and perhaps preserve a small, fragile piece of humanity. Mira decided to shut it down. She walked to the lab, the machines humming as if they knew what she was about to do. Vela followed. "I don't understand why you want to stop," she said, her eyes narrow. "The world is evolving. Why would we step back?" Mira stared at Echo, at the gentle glow. She remembered the tiny shop fire, the gas leak, the small but real tragedy she had seen. Kian stood there watching. "You can't ask me to do this," he said. "We're playing a dangerous game." The conversation stretched into a tense silence, a knot tightening in the room. "Please, just think," Mira whispered. "This machine is not a tool. It is a doorway. Each calculation is a decision that ripples through reality." Vela scoffed. "Yes, reality is a market. We're traders. We are meant to move the market." Mira thought of her father, of the night she first met the cryptic line of code. She thought of the little shop that burned, the small accident that followed each trade. She understood that the machine was not predicting but making. She realized that a trade had the power to cause life to vanish, to alter the lives of strangers in ways she could never foresee. She closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw the city streets, each one a network of possibility. She saw the ripple that could wash over a river of lives. She felt the ache in her chest. The decision she made would either free her or bind her to a world that could no longer trust the present. The trembling hand Mira pressed the emergency shutdown button on Echo. The hum stopped. The screen flickered to black. The room fell into an unnatural quiet. The machines outside, still working on other tasks, seemed unaware of the quiet in the quantum lab. Vela stared at her, the anger in her voice replaced by a fragile silence. Kian looked at the computer, at the way the lines of code curled like smoke. Vela took a breath that tasted of possibility and loss. She turned to Vela and Kian. "We have to choose what kind of world we want to live in," she said, her voice steady. "We can let this machine decide for us, or we can let the human heart decide for us." She thought of her father, of the people she had seen harmed, and she saw her choice, a world that was imperfect but alive. And she left the lab with the faint hum of Echo still echoing in her mind, the line of code she had found no longer a simple suggestion, but a lesson. She went to her apartment, looked at the cheap wallpaper, at the window that showed a small patch of sky. She smiled, not at the money she had made, but at the uncertainty that made life worth living. She knew that the market would never be perfect, that the world would always have small disasters that could be avoided by asking, what if, not just the next line of code. In the days that followed, the Quantum Portfolio Fund adjusted its strategy. They used human insight, not a machine's cold calculations. The market became a story again, with its ups and downs, its small tragedies, and its big triumphs. The city felt a little more fragile, but also a little more hopeful. Mira sat at her desk, her father's picture on the wall. She pulled out the old file with the single line of code and looked at it. She felt a gentle warmth. We are not the only ones who can shape the future, she thought. We all are. We must be careful of the ripples we create. She closed the file and looked out at the street, at the ordinary people walking, at the possibility of a better tomorrow. She realized that the real power was not in a machine that could predict the future, but in the choices humans made, choices that were messy, imperfect, and, most importantly, human. The quantum computer had been a mirror, showing what would happen if we let certainty rule. And she had decided to live in a world of possibility, in a world where the future was a story yet to be written, and where every small decision had the potential to change the world. And in the quiet hum of the city at night, a small, quiet thought lingered. Perhaps the greatest discovery was not about predicting prices, but about recognizing that we are all co-authors of the future, and that the greatest risk lies not in what we cannot control, but in what we choose to control.
Found this interesting? Subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like, share it out, and drop your questions or ideas in the comments. Until our next adventure.